Hello and welcome to Storytime. Little Red Riding Hood. This version was retold by Dobkin and the illustration was done by Subhendu Karmaker. Who do you think this is? Little Red Riding Hood. Yes, she's the main character of today's story. Let's read and see what other characters are in the story. Once upon a time, a little girl lived with her mother and her brother in a small cottage by the edge of the forest. Her favorite piece of clothing was a long red cape with a soft silky hood. She wore it so often that very soon everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood. That is a cape. One day, Little Red Riding Hood was bored and looking for something to do. "You could sweep the floors," said her mother, who was busy painting the fence. "No," said Little Red Riding Hood, "I don't think that's what I want to do." "You could help clean the yard," said her brother, who was busy chopping wood. "No," said Little Red Riding Hood, "I don't think that's what I want to do." "Then you could visit your grandmother," said her mother. "You're old enough to go by yourself, and you haven't seen her for weeks." "That's exactly what I want to do," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Grandmother lives at the other end of the woods. It will be an adventure." So Little Red Riding Hood's mother packed a basket full of treats for the girl to take to her grandmother. "Just remember," said her mother, "the wood can be very dangerous. So when you leave, please go straight to grandmother's and don't be late." "She won't listen," said her brother. "Yes, I will," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Of course she will," said her mother. "Okay, dear, something else before you go. Only talk to those you know." "She will listen," said her brother. "Yes, I will," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Of course she will," said her mother. "Oh, one last thing, sweetheart. From the path you shouldn't stray, or you could get lost one day." Do you think she'll listen? Let's find out. "She won't listen," said her brother. "Yes, I will," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Of course she will," said her mother. "Goodbye, dear. Give your grandmother a big hug for me." "Yes, mother," said Little Red Riding Hood as she headed out the door, down the path, and into the forest. There was so much to see in the woods. A sleeping owl, a giant mushroom, an amazing spider web. Then Little Red Riding Hood remembered what her mother had said. "When you leave, please go straight to Grandma's house and don't be late." "But," thought Little Red Riding Hood, "Mother surely will want me to enjoy the forest." So she stopped and looked around. But just then, a dark shape stepped out from just behind the trees. It was a wolf. He was smiling a charming smile. "Why, hello, little girl," said the wolf. "Isn't this a lovely day?" Little Red Riding Hood remembered what her mother had said. "Something else before you go. Only talk to those you know." "But," thought Little Red Riding Hood, "he seems like such a friendly wolf. Mother surely wouldn't want me to be rude." Do you think she's going to talk to the wolf? "Hello, Mr. Wolf," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Yes, it is a lovely day." "And you seem to be such a delicious by which I mean delightful child. The wolf's smile grew bigger. What might your name be? Everyone calls me Little Red Riding Hood, the girl said. A splendid name, said the wolf. And where might you be headed, Little Red, if I may call you that? Yes, you may, said Little Red Riding Hood. I'm bringing my grandmother this basket of treats. She lives just on the other side of the forest. How kind of you, said the wolf. In fact, wouldn't your grandmother like a lovely bouquet of flowers as well? There are some just over the hill, down by the edge of the river. But Little Red Riding Hood remembered what her mother had said. From the path you shouldn't stray, or you could get lost one day. What do you think she's going to do? But, thought Little Red Riding Hood, Mother surely will want me to bring grandmother some flowers. That's a wonderful idea, Mr. Wolf. I will pick some right away. And she scampered off into the woods. Goodbye, Little Red, the wolf called after her. I'm sure we'll meet again very soon. And then he whispered, by which I mean for lunch. The moment Red Riding Hood disappeared, the wolf dashed down the path towards grandmother's cottage. He tapped lightly on the door. Grandmother, he said in his best little girl voice. It's me, Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red? Really? How wonderful! Grandmother flung open the door. Wait, she said. You are not Little Red Riding Hood. Sadly, no, said the wolf, by which I mean goodbye. And he swallowed the grandmother in one big gulp. And now, said the wolf, patting his stomach, I'll wait for dessert. Sometime later, Little Red Riding Hood came out of the woods. She was dirty and rumpled, and there were burrs in her hair. It was much harder to find a path again than I thought it would be, she said. She was surprised to find grandmother's door wide open. She stepped inside. Grandmother, are you home? Yes, dear, came a scratchy voice from the bedroom. But I'm in bed. I'm afraid I have a nasty cold. Little Red Riding Hood followed the voice into the bedroom. The curtains were closed and it was very dark. Grandmother was wearing a floppy nightcap, and the blankets were pulled past her nose. Red Riding Hood moved towards the bed. Grandmother's eyes looked very odd. Why, Grandmother, she said, what big eyes you have. The better to see you with, my dear. Come closer so I can give you a big hug. Red Riding Hood took another step and saw two odd triangles poking up under the nightcap. And Grandmother, what big ears you have. The better to hear you with, my dear. Can you come a bit closer still? Just then, the blanket slipped from the grandmother's face, revealing two rows of very sharp teeth. But Grandmother, said Little Red Riding Hood, what big teeth you have. The better to eat you with, roared the wolf, leaping out of the grandmother's bed. Red Riding Hood screamed, "Ah! Ah!" She ran out of the bedroom, through the main room, and into the kitchen. Slamming the door behind her, she clambered into the cabinet and yanked the door shut. Boom. Oh, why didn't I listen to Mother? she thought. If I hadn't stopped at the woods, I wouldn't have met the wolf. And if I hadn't talked to the wolf, I wouldn't have left the path. If I hadn't left the path, I wouldn't have been late to grandmother's. Then, none of this would have happened. In the kitchen, she could hear the wolf calling her. "Where are you, little red?" he said. "There's no need to hide." By which I mean I'm going to find you and eat you, no matter what. Just then, something crashed. A voice yelled. Dishes smashed. The sounds got louder and louder and wilder and wilder. And then everything was quiet. What do you think happened? Let's find out. Little Red Riding Hood peeked from the cabinet. There stood her brother, his axe in one hand. He was helping grandmother out of the wolf. "Thank you, dear," said grandmother. "It was very dark in there." The brother looked at Little Red Riding Hood. "I knew you wouldn't listen." Little Red Riding Hood scrambled out of the cabinet and gave her brother a big hug. "You were right," she said, "but I will listen from now on." Then Red Riding Hood, her brother, and her grandmother all sat down together to eat the treats from the basket. The end. Now that we've got to the end of the story, can you now tell me who the other characters in the story were? Red Riding Hood's mother gave her 2 instructions when she was leaving. Do you remember them? I hope you enjoyed the story and you learned some lessons from the story. Till next time, bye.